Hi, everyone. I'm Sara, and welcome to this conversation. We are excited to be here to talk about a specific form of collaboration, the national-local partnership. And I thought to get us started and to set the stage a little bit, we'd go around and have everybody talk just very briefly about how your specific collaboration works. They obviously come in different forms and want people to understand sort of how you go about partnering with other organizations. And as you're doing that, maybe also add a little bit about your why. These are hard. These take time. They take a lot of work. So why do them in the first place? Wendi, you want to kick us off?
Sure. Partnerships, I think, have been really critical to MLK50.com, especially because we're a relatively new organization and still very small, just 6 people on our editorial team. And so partnering with organizations like the Marshall Project and like ProPublica have allowed us to do work that we really wouldn't be able to do on our own. They have data resources, data teams that we're too small to be able to do. Where we excel is the on-the-ground reporting and having the deep connections in Memphis, where our newsroom is located. And the larger organizations get the benefit of that, and then we get the benefit of their deeper expertise, maybe around investigative editing, definitely data research, number crunching, in ways I think makes all the organizations involved look really good.
Ebony.
Sure. The partnerships at the Marshall Project are a key part of our strategy. And they look different depending on the project and the story that my newsroom colleagues are reporting out. They are a key part of us reaching the widest possible audience and also having measurable impact in local communities.
Charlie.
Yeah, so for us, partnerships can take a whole lot of different forms, depending on the story and the project and the goal for that story. As Ebony, mentioned, one of the projects we're most proud of is our local reporting network, which aims to provide funding for local news organizations to devote a reporter to spend a year working on an investigative project. And we cover the salary for the reporter for the year, as well as, to what Wendi mentioned, have a whole team of folks on our data team and research team and news applications team who work with our local partners to produce those stories. And the why is pretty simple, which is that across the country, journalists and local communities have a ton of ideas in their minds and in their notebooks. And what they lack is the time to pursue those. And so the whole point of working with the news organizations, in addition to reaching different communities, more diverse communities, local audiences, it's also to, we know that we're in a very privileged position at ProPublica and have been for years, and that we really wanted to give back to be a part of the solution in the local news ecosystem. And so that's what we're trying to do. And I think our local partners have proven that that's true, that there are tons of amazing ideas at local communities. And the thing that's sad is to think about what would happen if, they weren't able to do those, how their communities wouldn't be, able to hear and learn about those challenges and issues.
Yeah, the Why at Open Campus is really about impact for us. We're a national newsroom that knows a subject matter deeply, which is higher education in our case. And we believe that pairing that with local newsrooms across the country that know places very deeply can really supercharge reporting and create more impactful journalism. So we also see that collaboration working at a very sort of deep level that's at the core of our model. So how it works for us is that we are a national newsroom that then partners with local newsrooms to embed the reporter within it. Similar to you, Charlie, we help pay for the salary of those reporters and do fundraising jointly with the local newsrooms to add a dedicated higher education reporter to the staff. And we try to think about this as a sort of co-creating a beat within local newsroom and really trying to work to sustain that as well. So collaboration for us means something for the long haul, in the work. And we've really found it to be effective so far and also fun along the way. One thing I'd love for everyone to talk about too is, a big success story. I think We do this because we do want the work to be better. We do want to, bolster local news. So maybe each of us could share a little bit about one thing that's really worked.
One of our most complex partnerships at the Marshall Project was one that involved multiple newsrooms and resulted in the Pulitzer Prize for the Mauled series that looked at dog bites and the really serious and deadly injuries that people received from those dogs. And so it was a partnership between AL.com, also the Indy Star, the USA Today Network, and the Invisible Institute. And so having those partnerships allowed for the work to be divided between our newsroom and those partners. It allowed for larger audiences to interact with the work, online and in print. Publication of the stories ran on the front page of the partner newspapers. And then we saw, impact immediately. So Indianapolis police immediately announced a change and their policy after that story was published. Also down in Baton Rouge, the mayor directed the police to stop using dogs on teenagers. And that story, covered the fact that many of the people who were injured, some of them were bystanders. They weren't even being pursued for violent crimes, but they had these really serious injuries.
Charlie, what's an example you want to highlight?
I'm glad I get to go before Wendi because I'm going to call her out as one of the projects we're incredibly proud to have partnered with. You don't want me to do that. All right. No, we partnered with MLK50. I'll let you talk more. I'll let you talk more about it.
Okay. So
but we
go ahead. Sorry, Charlie.
No, please. You go and then I'll go.
So I was a very, very proud member of the local reporting network with ProPublica. I can't say enough good things about it. Joined in 2019, and so I spent most of that year reporting on the rapacious debt collection practices of a nonprofit hospital here, Methodist Le Bonheur Healthcare. Told some stories that really had never been told, but we're kind of hiding in plain sight here, going on in the General Sessions Court. But as local newsrooms become depleted, there just aren't as many bodies to actually do the work. And so we were able to follow several people who were being hounded by this nonprofit hospital, including a grocery store worker who was making about $10 an hour and owed the hospital so much that if she paid as the judge ordered on these hospital bills, she would be 90 years old by the time she'd paid it off. These were people whose only mistake was being sick and poor at the same time. The stories had immediate impact. The hospital announced that it was going to raise the pay of its lowest paid workers. It overhauled its charity care policies to make them twice as generous as they had been before, and also ended up erasing nearly $12 million in hospital debt for more than 5,300 defendants. And so because of the work that Charlie was my immediate editor on this. He's an amazing editor. But because of the work that our teams were able to do, there are thousands of people who will never be sued by this hospital because the policies have changed. And when I think about why I started MLK50, I wanted to make a measurable, tangible difference in the lives of people here in Memphis, vulnerable people. And we were able to do that together. And I don't think we would have been able to do that had we approached the story separately.
I want to echo everything that Wendi said, and also note that Wendi's story not only made a tremendous impact locally, running on MLK50's site, on the front page of the Commercial Appeal, on TV stations across Memphis. It also ran on NPR News, and it ran in the Guardian internationally. So it gave an audience that was local, national, and international for what was an incredibly important story. I also just want to spend a minute talking about a partnership that we had the same year as Wendi with the Anchorage Daily News, which was a look at sexual violence in Alaska, which was a topic that Alaska has the highest rates of sexual violence in the United States. And for generations, people in Alaska knew about this, but the problem wasn't getting any better. And the Anchorage Daily News decided to focus on this and explore the root causes of this and give voice to people who were affected by this. And it led to an immediate federal declaration of an emergency in Alaska, a tremendous amount of funding. And it really gave survivors of sexual violence a voice back, which is something that they had not had throughout this process. And so very proud of that one and many other projects that we've done as well.
Thanks to both of you. I guess the thing that I would add from Open Campus, I mean, one thing that, Wendi, talking a little bit about why you started MLK 50 in the first place, why we started Open Campus in the first place, was really to cover colleges for communities that hadn't had coverage of them in many years and then sometimes decades. So, our partnership with Mississippi Today is one example I point to where we've been able to put a person on the beat that the state hasn't had dedicated higher education reporter for at least 2 decades and more. And as a result of that, the reporter Molly has been covering public meetings, some basic public forums that citizens haven't had much attention paid to. And in the process was really able to dig deeply into a big major policy proposal that would have changed drastically how the state awards student aid. And what that did is it gave citizens information they wouldn't have otherwise had to engage in that debate. A student group formed to push against the policy, which would have moved aid more toward white and wealthier residents and away from lower income and Black residents of Mississippi. They took their advocacy to the backdrops of College Game Day at the University of Mississippi, and the proposal is now on hold, and it is subject to further debate, a debate that wouldn't have existed otherwise. And one thing I also like to point out about this coverage is sort of how it feeds into the interplay between local and national news, and how the local news actually and the good reporting on the ground in places is providing better, sophisticated coverage for national reporters. We have a small national team ourselves who are focused on covering issues that are undercovered in higher education, not just the places. And our race and equity reporter saw Molly's reporting and decided to really do a broader story about sort of the role of race and merit aid across the South. The story was then picked up by the Washington Post and brought attention to an issue both in Mississippi and across the country that is undercovered and under scrutinized. One thing that we were talking about as we were gearing up for this panel was, the specifics of the national local partnerships lend themselves to questions of power dynamics and how you manage those. Sometimes the partnerships are between organizations which have different budgets, different sizes, different purviews, different missions. So how do you navigate those? I don't know if anyone wanted to start with that. Of what's one aspect of these relationships that you've had to navigate, and what's your advice to others who might be considering them?
I was chatting this morning with Ruth Baldwin, who is the head of partnerships for the Marshall Project, and she was reminding me that the Marshall Project doesn't charge for-profit partners, even though they may have more resources than some of the smaller newsrooms that we partner with. But that when we partner with the smaller newsroom, it may mean that our editors at the Marshall Project may be more involved in some of the editing and shaping of the narratives, although our partners who are smaller certainly bring a lot to the table. Often, as Wendi mentioned, they're embedded in the community. They know the communities, right there. And so that is also a part of our local coverage strategy as we're looking to expand in local communities across the country with our strategic plan. But clear expectations, Sara, and being really clear about, the expectations of the partnership and what both sides are bringing to the table, how that'll be communicated, how the work will be divided, are all a part of the things that Ruth does on a really excellent daily basis on behalf of the Marshall Project.
Yeah, clear expectations for sure. Being direct about what you need and what you want from the others and what you will provide. Wendi, what have you learned?
I can jump in there.
Oh, you're good now.
Am I still on mute?
You're
okay. I think when I was accepted into the local reporting network, I had been in awe of ProPublica for years, right? And so I was just dazzled and humbled by the opportunity to be in relationship with them. And I think that initially that might have led me to sit on maybe some concerns that I had, or maybe not be as vocal. Really no fault of ProPublica, but just feeling like I'm so grateful. I don't want to, ruffle any feathers. But I think as the relationship grew and deepened and, extended over, I don't know, almost 2.5 years, that I became more comfortable with saying, well, this is really what we need, and this is where we could use help. And is it possible to shift in that way? And so, ProPublica was always really receptive to that. And so I guess my advice to smaller organizations would be to recognize up front all the value that you're bringing to the partnership as well, and really see it as a partnership among equals, even though one organization may have more resources. You're both vital to the relationship. I think another thing that really was a benefit was being able to expose other people on my team to ProPublica's webinars and training and that sort of thing. Again, the kind of professional development that MLK 50 doesn't yet have internal bandwidth to provide, but we were able to offer that through the partnership. And I think that's one way that ProPublica is strengthening the investigative reporting ecosystem outside of the individual reporter in the newsroom that may be part of the local reporting network.
Wendi, what's something a national organization or a bigger organization, sometimes the national one like ours is sometimes much smaller than our partner at the local level, what could they do to help with encouraging their partner from the beginning to be more direct about concerns? Are there things that you could see might have helped in hindsight?
ProPublica is really good about doing kind of periodic surveys to get the participants' feedback. Honestly, I think that it is a lot of it is just incumbent on the local news organization just to feel comfortable doing that and take advantage of those opportunities. I think to some degree, the larger organization might be mindful, but I don't want to in any way come off as critical of ProPublica, because I think they are very mindful of that. But just to be aware and to be open. I mean, they're hiring you for your journalism skills, or getting that partnership because of that. And, as journalists, we're taught to ask questions and be critical and be direct and candid. And so that doesn't stop when you're in a partnership with another organization, regardless of the size.
Yeah, let me just, if I can, throw in a couple things and things that we've learned, along the way. First is, I think, as part of our process of preparing to accept applications for the local reporting network, we try to create lots of opportunities for dialogue. So it's not a black box process where, people submit an application and it's sort of things happen and you find out if you got it or you didn't. We try to give an opportunity to provide feedback on the application. We try to have a, open Q&A session for people to come and talk to us about what we're looking for. We try to give annotated copies of prior proposals that have been successful so people can see, what it is that we gravitate to. I think that's part of sort of evening the playing field a bit. I think at the beginning, this was true pre-COVID, and I'm certainly hoping it's true very soon again. At the very start of each partnership, our editors traveled to the local newsrooms and spent a few days there. And it was really important to us that those conversations began in the local newsrooms and in the local areas and not in New York where we're based, because, this is about the local community. I so loved, traveling with Wendi and going to court with Wendi and sitting next to her and meeting her sources and seeing the community. And those in-person discussions really set us up as, equals in this dialogue, and didn't, and I was coming to, to her community. And I think that's really important. The other thing I think that we try to do is in the middle and at the end of each of our LRN classes, we send questions to both the editors and the reporters to seek opportunities where things worked well and where they didn't. And we try to internalize and put into place the, things that we can improve, recognizing that, we're not perfect. We're not close to perfect. And there's always things we can do better at. And so use each class of the LRN as an opportunity to sort of identify what we can do to make our local partners, if there's any feelings that we haven't treated them as, a full partner, what we can do to make that happen.
Yeah, I think a lot of partnerships, right, boil down to any sort of partnership, like what being a good human being and treating people as you expect to be treated, and just keeping those direct lines of communication open. Harkening back to what Ebony said at the beginning, I mean, one thing that we're very clear about is that when we embed a reporter in a local newsroom, that is that reporter, that is that newsroom's reporter and works for them. So they're the first team and we're the second team. We're actually very proud of being the second team. We feel like there's a lot of power and resource that we bring, and that together we're accomplishing something that is firstly, focused on improving the coverage that the community gets. So we really are very deliberate about articulating our roles. One question that I wanted to sort of add to the conversation about success is about the bottom line. How have these partnerships helped you from that standpoint?
Well, one of the things I know at the Marshall Project that our director of partnerships has told me is that when we're working with another national partner or a larger partner, a lot of times they will contribute to, covering the cost of visuals or some of the expenses. So that is helpful to the bottom line. But also when we're talking to potential funders, we explain to them how, partnerships is a big part of our strategy in terms of reaching audiences. And, if you think about funders as investors, people like to put their money to good use in situations where they feel like it'll have like the most impact. And so that's one way we're able to speak to that is our impact on the media ecosystem and how we work with other media organizations.
Yeah, we think about our partnerships as expanding the pie. And we really feel like that we're able to tap into funding that alone maybe neither one of us could tap into. There are ways that we've been able to unlock local dollars of organizations that care about higher education, but perhaps haven't thought about supporting journalism before. And then there are ways that we as a national organization would never be able to diversify the foundations that we receive money from because they are excited about working with somebody in their state or in their community that is doing work locally. So we think that together we're actually able to just bring more money to local news, and that has been really powerful collaboration in a lot of places.
Yeah, I would say in Memphis that in MLK 50 we just turned 5, but when we started the local reporting network, we were just 2 years old, and so there were national funders who had told us no, that we were too small or we were too risky. And then after we had this amazing investigation published, I can think of 2 specifically that had told me no, that called me and said, "Hey, we should talk again." And I was like, "Well, yeah, we were as amazing before we published this as we were after." But it definitely opened up doors of funding, and I'm talking like, good size, healthy 6-figure grants that we didn't that we've been rejected for before. So it was very critical.
What I love, Sara and Ebony and Wendi, is that, it to some extent, there's a proof of concept here, which is we've long felt that when you produce unique, sophisticated, nuanced, deep reporting, that readers want to read it and readers care. And what we've heard time and time again from our partners is that when they publish stories as part of our partnership, they see subscriptions go up those days, they see reader feedback going up those days, that the value proposition of these partnerships, it pays off in just the way you'd want it to. So that was a theory. That wasn't a proof. There wasn't any proof there. But I do feel every time that happens, it's like, yeah, that's what should happen. That's what we think good journalism should do.
And we just have a few more minutes, but maybe we could close quickly on saying, why does this all matter?
Yeah, well, I'll just say, it's that saying, if you want to go fast, go alone, but if you want to go far, go together. And I think that kind of animates why we do partnerships, why we look for them locally with local publications, but also national ones. We're all wanting to do the same kind of thing. A lot of us got into journalism for the same reasons. And so partnering with other organizations just makes it stronger. And ultimately, I think it even makes the work easier because
You broke up there at the very end, Wendi. You said ultimately it makes the work easier.
Yeah, because you're not doing it alone. You're not doing it alone.
I love what Wendi said about partnerships. You can go further, with them than you can when you go alone. I'm thinking specifically about a partnership that the Marshall Project has had in the last few days with NPR on a federal penitentiary in Thompson, Illinois, and partnering with everybody isn't good at everything at the same degree. And so when you partner, you can really capitalize in a good way on what your partner is good with. So maybe they have a really strong team around audio and video, but you're really strong in data. And so I see that as also one of the benefits of why partner.
Yeah, I love how it extends the idea of what a colleague is or who a colleague is. I think it makes all of us feel bigger and gives us the strengths we need together to have more impact. And Charlie, we're almost out of time, so you get the last word on this.
Yeah, I think working with partners also reminds me that traditional news organizations have often not done a great job of connecting with communities, particularly communities that haven't been, their focus over the years. And working with INN members and smaller local nonprofits is a way of tapping into communities that the media have often ignored. And so to me, it's not just about finding new colleagues, but also about reaching very important audiences so that we're not just taking their stories and running for them, but we're writing, about them with them. So that to me is really important.
Thanks everyone for the great conversation, and thanks to all of you for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I love the raw honesty that came out of that conversation. Partnerships can definitely elevate newsrooms, but they take work. And it's not all sunshine and rainbows either. And I think that really came through. Okay, let me invite Wendi, Sara, and Charlie to join me on the stage, to join me up here on the stage. I like the little background variety we got going on here from what we saw in the recording. I don't know, Wendi, is that the same outfit? Did you do a continuity? I can't tell for sure. All right. All right. Let's see what the audience wants to know about. Our first question will be from Alex. Alex asks, do any of you work with student journalists? And how can young voices be part of such invaluable partnerships? So I don't know who wants to take that first, but would love to hear anyone's take on that.
I can jump in a little bit. Through a partnership with Cal Matters, which does work with student journalists through their college journalism network, we do work with a team of community college students. Community colleges are one big sector of higher education we feel is very undercovered. And so we love working with these students to add more coverage, and with Cal Matters to add more coverage in California to these issues. We have some other ideas going forward too about how we might incorporate students in covering HBCUs and other undercovered sectors of higher education as well, and really bringing in on the ground experience from different places. Oftentimes when there's no journalism in a college town, the student journalists are the only ones actually providing local coverage.
All right. Next, a very practical question from Maria. Do you all enter into an MOU process with your partners? And a related question from Kate. And if so, on the MOU, what are the key terms? Is there any conversations about intellectual property and rights? And I'm actually going to maybe try and call on Wendi to talk about that a little bit first, and then we'll open it up to others.
Yeah, so there is an agreement I signed. I think I signed away the rights to my firstborn and my dog. I don't know, some deals with the devil. I'm not sure. I can't remember. No, there was with the local reporting network, with ProPublica's local reporting network. There's a partnership between ProPublica and the reporter. So it's not directly organization to organization, which I think is perhaps something that can maybe make for stronger relationships going forward. But initially, anyway, with the LRN, it's the reporter, which was me, and then ProPublica. And so there is a commitment that you're working on this full time. But as far as intellectual property, Charlie, you'll have to jump in. I don't remember anything specifically, any language around that.
Yeah, so we have agreements that we sign with both
reporter and with the news organization. And it's not designed to be a overly legalistic contract with lots of pages and addenda. It's basically agreeing that we're agreeing to pay your salary up to a certain amount and a stipend for benefits for a year, and you agree to spend the year working on this project. And your news organization agrees to not ask you to do other things over the course of the year, which is exactly what we advertise the LRN to be. ProPublica operates under the Creative Commons license, and so we make clear that our partners both know about that and are aware of that. And we also ask that they include some language about the relationship in our agreements. As far as intellectual property rights, we have had some members of the LRN who've gone on to enter into book contracts and even sell rights to the work that they've created. And we believe this is oftentimes, if it's work just done by the partner, that this is something that is the partners to do with as they will. Sometimes there are co-byline stories, so ProPublica would have a part in that. We've always, in everything we've done, been a very fair partner on this, and so it's not anything that we spell out in advance in the agreements.
Sara, anything to add?
Yeah, we also do an MOU. I think it's important to spell out clearly expectations or something like that. But we do try to keep ours pretty straightforward and really focus a high priority on the things we care the most about, rather than having a whole laundry list of things. Two things that we really emphasize are regular communication with a partner and establishing that, as well as our desire for these positions to create enterprise reporting, which we define pretty broadly. It has other details in it that includes that, these stories will be co-published both by Open Campus and by the partner newsroom, and other details about things like payments. But really, I guess one piece of advice I would have would be to make sure you know what you care most about, and make sure that's emphasized in these agreements, so that you're very clear about that, and that then both sides can have an opportunity to just be really aware of where each side is coming from on that.
All right, Charlie, it's your turn in the hot seat. I hope you're ready. Jody Spotted Bear says, my feedback from ProPublica, if I remember correctly, was that there are a lot of good applications and they can't work with everyone. Not very helpful. Charlie, what can you say?
All right. Hi, Jody. Thanks for the comment. So yeah, we do get more applications for our local reporting network than we have slots, and it's always hard to turn down good projects and good proposals. We try to do a couple things though with this in mind. So first, we have an opportunity before people submit their applications to submit drafts of their applications, and we'll provide feedback on those. Oftentimes we'll provide feedback more than once. We want to help people design a proposal that even if we don't select it, that will be better than the one they initially submitted, and so that they may choose to either seek other funding for it, to try again, or to pursue it on their own. So Wendi has said this publicly, so I'm not saying anything that she hasn't said, but I worked with Wendi closely before she submitted her proposal. It was a lot of fun to do that, and I didn't know if she was going to be selected or not, but we think it's really important to give that opportunity. We're also happy to work with folks after the end of the proposal season to sharpen their proposal, to help them create a reporting plan, to give them an opportunity to apply again. So we know it can be frustrating when you put a lot of effort and a lot of thought into it, and you don't get the response you're hoping for. We hope it isn't discouraging to the point that you don't try again. We have had folks who've applied up to 4 different times and haven't been selected, and then do get selected. So I would just say, take that as an opportunity to keep tapping us for our thoughts, and hopefully we'll get to yes.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay, we were going to take a question from David about the ProPublica model, but I see that's been answered in the chat. So I'm going to move on to Teresa. Teresa asks, what would be the top 2 suggestions you would have to build national partnerships and get noticed as a small news organization? So maybe Wendi, we'll start from you, and then we'll go over to Sara, and Charlie, if you want to weigh in on that, great too. But Wendi, I think it's coming from the perspective of a smaller local organization. So I think you can hopefully take the first crack.
Yeah. Partnering with ProPublica came at such a key moment in our development and our growth. It just really was a catalyst for a lot of other things. But I think, like Charlie said, I had this idea for a story that really came out of a line in a white paper that accompanied a story on racialized bankruptcy that Paul Keel had written for ProPublica. The proposal that I turned in, I thought was good, right? I wouldn't turn it in if I didn't think it was good, but it needed work, right? And so I really did take Charlie and other people at ProPublica, their advice to heart, and really spent a lot of time working on that. And that can be a barrier if you're a small newsroom. I probably invested, I don't know, maybe 80 or more hours in researching and writing that proposal. And so if you're already running a newsroom and trying to keep things going, like, where do you find that extra time? So that is a hurdle, and I don't want to pretend like that's not a thing. But I think being persistent, I think being confident about what you bring to the table in the partnership and your expertise is key in that. Just trying and trying again. I get that it is discouraging. Completely, I get when you get the no's. I have gotten many no's, but now I just see those as slow yeses. And I just have to keep working on it to turn it into like an official yes.
Sara.
I am going to take that line and consider all my no's slow yeses. That's awesome. We are a small, we are a small organization ourselves. So also, even though we're a national partner in these relationships, also understand the challenge of getting noticed and cutting through the noise. I mean, I think, some of what Wendi said is what I would also say, which is persistence. But I would say reach out, develop relationships. I love talking with anybody. If you want to cover higher education, reach out and let us know. I'd love to talk more. So I think it just starts with, getting out there, getting to know people, asking for time. A lot of people in this community I found to be amazingly generous. And I hope to be able to return that to others. And I think you should take advantage of what nonprofit journalism has going for it, which is a lot of that collaborative spirit.
Anything to add, Charlie?
Yeah, I mean, I would just say that one of the nice things about working as a small news organization is that you're evaluated based on the quality of your ideas. I was so heartened for the April round of the Local Reporting Network that the 3 projects we chose were all from really small news organizations, Document in New York, The Current in Savannah, Georgia, and The Beacon in Kansas City, all 3 of which didn't even exist 3 years ago. So they were selected on the strength of their journalistic ideas and what they brought to the table, which often in grant processes, it's who you know. And this is not a who you know. It's how good is your idea, and can we see this being a strong accountability story? So, I mean, to me, that's heartening. It's not a good old boys network. It's an effort to get the best journalism out there.
Okay, Charlie, I think this is maybe a good follow-up to that, which is how can freelancers get involved with the Local Reporting Project and initiatives like it?
Yeah, so we absolutely will work with freelancers. So the key is to first either start with an idea that you want to look at, a local idea, and share it with us, hear some of our feedback, or to look for a local partner. We're happy to work with any local partner. It can be radio, it can be TV, it can be print, it can be online. We're very platform agnostic, so you could find a local partner in your market. And if you don't know one, we're also happy to talk to you about ones that may make sense for your project based on folks that we know. So we're happy to try to play the role of matchmaker if we can, but we're also happy to work with any local partner that you choose if we feel that they're committed to the project and it's a local partner that can help give your journalism some reach. So we've had a number of very successful freelance partners over the years. I would say, at least 10 of our 60 LRN projects that we've done to date, more than 60 have been done by freelancers.
And Charlie, I think you spoke to a question that Madeline asked about a possibility of ProPublica acting as a matchmaker. So it sounds like the answer is absolutely yes. You'd love to be a matchmaker between great freelance journalists and great small outlets?
Well, we're happy to talk to folks about potential options if we have connections to help to spur those conversations. Ultimately, it's up to the local news organizations if this makes sense to them right now. But we do see our role as we have a lot of connections with reporters. We have a lot of connections with current partners and former partners. So we're happy to play that role if we're able to.
All right, so we have about 4 minutes left, and I'm going to try and speed through 2 questions. So I'm going to ask everyone to keep their responses tight, and let's hit our out cue. So first question from Ken: how do you manage the editing process and reconcile disagreements? Maybe let's go to Sara first.
This is another spot where clarity and definition of roles is really important. We've discovered that in our situation, for example, we are often much better at the very outset of the process, that our feedback comes at a certain time and in a certain way, and we are very specific about talking through that with each editor almost on each story that we're working on, so that everybody kind of knows how to stay out of each other's way and to build on each other's strengths.
Wendi or Charlie, anything to add?
Good communication is key. That I totally agree with that. From my perspective, it doesn't really matter who's the first editor to take a crack at a story. We want to make sure that a story meets the standards of both news organizations, that both news organizations feel ownership of it and feel proud to run it.
Great. All right. Our last question is going to come from Sean. What are the problems for reporters and local news orgs in the partnering dynamic that should be considered in the process? And Wendi, you started talking about this, so I'm going to ask you to take this question first.
I think it just is incumbent on ultimately probably the larger organization, because they have more power in the relationship, just to be cognizant that you are dealing with a smaller newsroom, but also I think for journalists, as I said in the recorded part, to bring all the critical thinking skills that you would bring to a story to that partnership as well, and to not be timid in advocating for yourself or your organization. Great.
And Sara or Charlie, anything that you want to add from the perspective of the national organizations?
No, I think Wendi articulated well. And again, it's back to communication, clarity, generosity. That's something I think a lot about. Just being clear about what you need, and being very open to providing a range of help depending on what any story demands.
Awesome. Well, Wendi, Charlie, Sara, and Ebony, who is off on vacation, and we're all super jealous. I want to thank all of you for your time and your good questions. I want to thank everyone who came to check out this panel and left comments, and even the questions we didn't get to. This was really great, and I so appreciate your time and attention. Thank you.
Thanks, Jonathan.
Thanks.